The recovery took 6 weeks. It was, by any measure, remarkable. Not just medically remarkable, the kind of remarkable that would have generated papers and conferences and careers in a world where it could be published. The gene therapy protocols Mara's team had developed, the stem cell applications, the cellular regeneration regimen that nobody outside this island had ever attempted at this scale. All of it worked. All of it worked together, in the integrated and synergistic way that only happened when the underlying science was genuinely right. By the end of the first week, Dorian was conscious and coherent. By the end of the second week, he was sitting up without assistance, eating solid food, and responding to the medical team's assessments with the alert, impatient energy of a man whose mind had always moved faster than the people around him, and was now, apparently, moving faster than his own recovery schedule as well. By the end of the fourth week, he was walking. Short distances, assisted, with the careful deliberateness of someone relearning a body. But walking. Lance watched from a distance when he could, through windows and across courtyards. He watched Dorian's familiar face, the silver hair, the sharp features, the face of a 73-year-old man, moving through the world on a body that was 24 years old. It should have been moving. It was, in fact, one of the most unsettling things he had ever witnessed. The same face, the same eyes, unchanged and undiminished, carrying the same calculation and patience and absolute certainty. But below the neck, everything was different. The ease of movement, the straightness of posture, the body responding with a vitality that Dorian's original frame had been quietly losing for years. The mind was the same. The vessel beneath it was entirely new. And somehow, the combination was more disturbing than either alone would have been. By the fifth week, Dorian walked the full length of the complex unassisted and stood at the glass looking out at the ocean. And Lance, watching from the path, saw his shoulders lift, saw him breathe in the warm island air in the body of a young man who had signed a paper in a room somewhere and believed, perhaps, that it was worth it. Then Lance noticed something he hadn't expected. Dorian's face, his own face, the 73-year-old face that had been transplanted onto Cale's body, looked different. Not dramatically, not overnight, but undeniably. The deep lines had softened slightly. The hollowness beneath his cheekbones had filled. There was a color in his skin that hadn't been there before. Whether it was the young body's vitality slowly healing the head it now carried, or Osei and Mara's gene therapy doing its quiet work, Lance couldn't say. He didn't particularly care about the answer. What he cared about was the moment Dorian turned from the glass and caught his eyes. The smile that crossed Dorian's face was unlike any Lance had seen from him before. Not the controlled smile of the boardroom, not the pleasant smile of a man managing an impression. This was the smile of a man who believed, completely and without reservation, that he had just won everything. The whole world, contained in one expression. Lance turned and walked away before Dorian could see what was on his face. By the end of the fifth week of Dorian's recovery, Lance knew he was close. Not finished. Close. The distinction mattered enormously. A space displacement algorithm that was 95% correct was not a machine that worked 95% of the time. It was a machine that could do something catastrophic the other 5%. Lance had no interest in discovering what catastrophic looked like from the inside of a teleportation event gone wrong. So he was methodical. He was precise. He checked and rechecked every variable with the thoroughness of a man who understood that he would get exactly one attempt at this, and that one attempt had to be right. The work itself was familiar in principle, but demanding in practice. He had done this before: the spatial displacement, the rewriting of the machine's purpose from temporal to spatial. But never under these conditions. Never alone, never in secret, never without the ability to properly test before committing. It was, he thought on his better days, the most focused he had been since the original build. On his worst days, he thought, I know this works. I just don't know if I can get it right working alone, with no way to properly test it before the one attempt that has to count. Both things were true simultaneously. He had made his peace with that. He also knew, with a certainty that didn't require calculation, what was coming at the end of Dorian's recovery. A man who had structured his immortality project as a permanent institution, who had surrounded himself with people he intended to keep indefinitely, was not going to gather his scientists and physicians into a room and thank them for their service and send them home. How did you make yourself untouchable to the most powerful man in the world? He didn't have the answer yet, but he could feel himself getting closer to it, the way he felt close to a proof before the final variable resolved. The shape of it was there. The details weren't. Dorian surprised everyone by calling an all-hands meeting. Everyone assembled in the main conference hall, the largest interior space on the island, with a low stage at one end and seating for 100 and tiered windows that looked out across the southern beach toward the open ocean. The scientists, the physicians, the surgical team, the support staff, everyone who had been on this island and done what this island had asked of them, gathered in one room. Dorian walked in without assistance. The room's response was involuntary and immediate, a collective intake of breath, a murmur that moved through the assembled people like a wave. Whatever they had expected, a wheelchair, a walker, a man diminished by the magnitude of what had been done to him, this was not it. He walked with the ease of someone who had been using this body for years. He stood at the front of the room and looked out at all of them and smiled. And the smile was the smile of a man who had just won the largest bet he had ever placed.
Look at me.
Nobody needed to be asked. He spoke for 20 minutes. He was generous and specific in his thanks, naming teams, naming individuals, acknowledging particular contributions with the precision of someone who had been paying close attention even from a hospital bed. He was warm. He was genuine. He was, Lance thought from his seat in the third row, the most convincing version of a grateful man he had ever observed. He spoke about what they had accomplished, not in the language of hubris, but of shared achievement. What the world would someday understand this moment to mean, the patients who would be saved, the science that had been advanced, the boundary that had been crossed and would never be uncrossed. He paused. He looked out at the room with the expression of a man arriving at the thing he had been building toward.
I owe each of you a debt I cannot adequately repay. And because I cannot repay it, I have decided on a different approach. You will stay.
The room went very quiet. A held breath across 100 people.
Not as prisoners, as the people responsible for what I have become and what I intend to remain. The work is not finished. The work, I am telling you now, will never be finished. Because my body, however young and capable it currently is mortal. It will age. It will encounter disease and accident and the ordinary indignities of biological existence. When that happens, I will need you here. I will need your expertise, your protocols, your judgment. And when new challenges arise that require new capabilities, you will train others. You will build a team that can sustain this work indefinitely. You will ensure that I continue. That is your purpose now. That is what your work on this island has always been building toward, even if you didn't know it.
He smiled again, the same warm, genuine smile.
You will be well cared for. Everything you need will be provided. Your families will receive financial support, generously, immediately, without condition. I am not an unreasonable man. I simply cannot allow the most important scientific resource in the world to walk out the door.
He stepped down from the stage and walked out of the room, unhurried, his new body carrying him with the ease of a young man who had somewhere to be. The room sat in silence. Lance looked at the faces around him, the shock, the fear, the specific expression of people who had spent months telling themselves this was temporary and had just been told in the most definitive possible terms that it was not. He looked at Osei, 3 rows ahead, who was sitting very still with his hands in his lap and his eyes on the empty stage. He looked at Mara, 2 seats away, who was looking at her hands. And then she looked up, found him, and in her eyes, clearly and without ambiguity, for the first time, Lance saw it. Not the careful performance of someone who had decided, not the strained steadiness of someone holding a position they weren't certain of. Something that looked, simply and entirely, like regret. The permanent kind. The kind that arrives too late to do anything about. Lance held her gaze, gave her the smallest nod he could make. She looked back at her hands. Lance's escape plan was set. He had figured out all the necessary pieces. Lance had finalized the space machine. It worked. He was as certain of that as he could be without a live test. Very certain. with a small residual uncertainty he had chosen to accept, because the alternative was staying on this island indefinitely. The machine was ready. The algorithm was written. The destination coordinates were locked. The sequence he had mapped out was precise. Remote viewing was a feature he had built into the space machine from the beginning, a necessity, not an afterthought. A teleportation device without the ability to see its destination first was a liability. The bottom of the ocean looked like coordinates. The interior of a mountain looked like coordinates. So he had built the machine to see before it moved, and it was that capability that had allowed him to scan the Earth's surface and find a recently deceased young man in a municipal morgue, similar height and build, preserved and waiting. The steps. Disable the cameras and listening devices in the lab with a targeted energy surge, buying himself a window before the guards were alerted. Teleport the body here. Swap clothes and his ID badge. Position the body near the machine where the explosion would do the most damage to the face. Enough to make identification difficult, not enough to make identification impossible. Set the machine's self-destruct on a 30-second delay. Teleport himself to Palo Alto. Let the machine destroy itself and destroy the evidence. Dorian would find a burned body in Lance Everett's clothes, with Lance Everett's badge, in the ruins of a machine Dorian believed could only travel through time. The idea that Lance had secretly converted it into a space machine, teleported a replacement body in, and escaped. That was not a conclusion a man like Dorian would reach easily. Doubt, perhaps, but not certainty. And doubt was enough. One attempt, no second chances. Everything had to go right in the right order. He also noted something else. The island, visible now in the machine's spatial awareness, somewhere in Southeast Asia, a crescent of white sand and impossible green, surrounded by open ocean. He had been here for months and hadn't known where here was. He knew now. He filed the coordinates carefully, separately, with the specific intention of returning to them. Whatever else happened, whatever came after he got off this island and reached Ethan, he was coming back. Not for Dorian, for the people Dorian had trapped here. Scientists and physicians and security guards who had made choices of varying culpability, but who did not deserve to spend the rest of their lives on a beautiful island that belonged to a man who had decided he would live forever. Everything was ready. He had the body located. He had the coordinates locked. He had the sequence prepared and memorized. He was standing at the console, his finger on the keyboard, about to hit enter to start the first step of his plan. When the door opened, Mara walked in. He knew immediately that something had broken in her. Not her composure. She was standing upright, her hands at her sides, her expression arranged with the professional steadiness she had always carried. But underneath it, visible to anyone who had spent enough months watching her face, something was different. Something that had been held at great effort for a long time had simply stopped being held. She crossed the room without speaking, stood in front of him, looked at the machine for a moment, then back at his face. And whatever she was searching for, she apparently found. Because she exhaled, slowly, deliberately, the way you exhale when you have been holding something in your chest for too long.
I thought I was doing something historic. I told myself that. Every day. Historic. Important. The kind of work that changes what medicine can do. I came out of that surgery feeling like I should be sick.
Lance said nothing. He let her talk.
I've been trying to find the point where I could have stopped it. The exact moment. Because I know there was one. There's always one. Where the thing that came after it was still preventable. I can't find it. That's what keeps me up. Not that I couldn't have stopped it. That there were so many moments where I could have, and I didn't. And I'm not sure I could tell you why I didn't at any of them. Except that the next step always seemed manageable. Like it was just one more thing. Until it wasn't.
Mara.
I know. I didn't come here for absolution, Lance. I don't think that's available.
She stopped. Something moved across her face. Not a thought arriving, but something that had been pressing against the surface for days finally breaking through. Her hands, which had been steady, were not steady anymore. She looked at Lance with eyes that had gone wet and wide, her voice dropping to something barely held together.
Do you know what happened to Kyle's head?
Lance said nothing. Her body shook once, just once, a single involuntary tremor.
Kyle's head is still alive. Without a body. It's still...
She couldn't finish it. She pressed her hand over her mouth for a moment, tears streaming freely now. And when she took her hand away, she was crying in earnest. Not dramatically, not loudly, but the quiet, uncontrollable way of someone who has been holding something back for too long and has simply run out of the strength to hold it. Lance stood with that image and felt the full weight of what she was describing settle over the room. She looked at the machine again, and something crossed her face, a thought she hadn't finished thinking, arriving half-formed.
Could you really reverse time? Could we actually have a do-over?
Lance looked at her for a moment. Then he stepped forward, closed the distance between them, and put his hands on her shoulders. He pulled her close, not roughly, but decisively, the way you pulled someone close when you needed them near enough to hear something very quiet. If anyone was watching through the lab cameras, they would see two people embracing. They would see what people always saw when two people stood that close together for that long. He brought his mouth to her ear.
This isn't a time machine anymore. I've been converting it. For weeks.
He felt her go still.
It's a space machine now. I can use it to move from one point to another, any point on Earth. And I'm going to use it today to get off this island. I've already found the coordinates. I've planned the sequence. I have a dead body located. Someone who's already gone, who can't be hurt by any of this. And I'm going to bring him here, swap our clothes, position him near the machine, and set the whole thing to self-destruct after I leave. Dorian doesn't know the machine can do this. He thinks it's a time machine. Seeing a burned body in Lance Everett's clothes, with Lance Everett's badge, in the wreckage of a destroyed machine, it'll be enough. He'll have doubts, but it'll be enough.
Mara was quiet for a moment. He could feel her processing it. The scientist in her immediately stress-testing the plan, finding the variables, assessing the risks.
It could work.
It could work.
Another silence. Then she pulled back just enough to look at him, her face inches from his. Her eyes had done something in the last 30 seconds, shifted, changed quality. The sadness was still there, but behind it, briefly and unmistakably, something else. A small, fragile flicker of something that looked almost like hope.
I can get you out too. The machine can...
She shook her head. The flicker was gone. The sadness was back, deeper than before. The kind of sadness that has made a decision and is living with it.
I can't.
Mara...
I can't go back. Not after what I did. Not to the real world. Not to all of it. My colleagues, my field, people who trusted me to be who I said I was. I can't walk back into that and pretend.
Lance looked at her. He understood. Not agreed with, understood. The specific weight of a person who has done something they cannot undo and cannot see themselves past. The shame that doesn't leave because the thing that caused it doesn't unhappen. He also understood that Mara Thorne, once she had decided something, did not undecide it. That quality, the same one that had made her brilliant and made her complicit, was not something he could argue her out of. She held his gaze for one more moment. Then she stepped back, out of the embrace, and in her normal voice, clear, professional, audible to any camera that might still be running, she said,
Besides, I still have unfinished work to do.
Lance wasn't sure what she meant. More research? Some obligation she felt to the people still on the island? Something else entirely, something she hadn't said. He didn't have time to ask, and she didn't offer, and he understood that she had already closed that door. She looked at him one last time. Her eyes were wet. She didn't try to hide it, didn't wipe them, just let them be what they were. A small smile crossed her face, sad and real and entirely without performance. Then she turned and walked out of the lab without looking back. Lance stood and watched her go. She didn't turn around. Her shoulders were straight. Her pace was steady. She walked out of the building and into the warm island evening and was gone. He stood there for a few minutes longer than he should have. Then He breathed in, breathed out, and turned back to the machine. It was time. First, the cameras. He had thought carefully about this. The energy surge required to disable every camera and listening device in the building would be significant. Not dangerous to him, but loud. Everyone on the island would know something had happened the moment he triggered it. Which meant the moment he triggered it, the clock started. No going back. He ran the sequence. The surge moved through the room like a physical thing. A pressure change, a pop. Every light in the building flickering once before the backup systems kicked in. From above the doorway, the small red light of the camera went dark. From the corners of the room, 2 more. From the wall panel beside the door, the listening array's indicator light followed. The sound had been considerable. Lance was already moving. He pulled up the remote viewing coordinates he had locked in that morning, ran the teleportation sequence he had prepared and tested, and prepared again, positioned himself at the control console, and initiated. The machine came alive. That was the only way to describe it. Alive. The hum that had always been present deepened into something that Lance felt in his chest rather than heard with his ears. The air in the room began to move, a slow rotation that built quickly, objects on the workbench vibrating against the surface. Electric arcs sparked between the raised points at the top of the machine, blue-white and sharp, reaching toward each other across the gap like something searching. The overhead lights dimmed and brightened in sequence with the machine's power draw, and then a sound like the world cracking open, and the dead man was there. He appeared in the center of the machine's field without drama, without fanfare, simply present where he had not been a moment before. Young, similar height to Lance, similar build, his face composed with the particular stillness of someone who had gone quickly and without warning. Lance stood looking at him for exactly 2 seconds, long enough to confirm what the remote viewing had shown, long enough to feel the full moral weight of what he was doing, and the full moral distinction between this and what Dorian had done. This man was already gone. His body had no further use for him. Lance was borrowing it for 5 minutes to save himself and, if everything went right, eventually everyone else on this island. Dorian had taken a living person's body. Lance was using a dead man's. The detail mattered. He held on to it. He moved quickly. He stripped off the clothes he was wearing, jacket, shirt, shoes, and dressed the dead man in them. Next, he clipped his badge onto the dead man's belt. From the bag he had prepared days earlier, he pulled out his spare set of clothes and dressed himself. The whole exchange took under 2 minutes. Outside, the commotion was building. Voices, guards. The energy surge had drawn attention, and they were getting closer. He repositioned the body, carefully, with as much respect as the circumstances allowed, close to the machine's central housing. The face oriented toward the component that would generate the most heat in the self-destruct sequence. Enough damage to make identification difficult, not enough to eliminate the evidence of a person having been there. He left his notebook on the floor beside the body, opened to a page of equations, the handwriting unmistakably his. Then Lance pulled up the keyboard, fingers moving fast across the keys, entering the final sequence. Destination, Palo Alto, California. Coordinates locked. The self-destruct sequence, a secondary algorithm running on a delayed timer, set to initiate 30 seconds after the teleportation event completed. Outside, the commotion was getting louder. The machine was extraordinarily loud. The electric arcing was visible under the door gap in blue-white flashes. Nobody came in. Lance stepped to the center of the machine's field. He could feel it immediately. The spatial displacement building, the air thickening around him with the particular quality he remembered from 8 months ago and had spent 8 months trying not to remember. The machine doing what it had been redesigned to do, finding him, locking on. The destination coordinates waiting on the other side. He made himself stand still. There was a version of this moment he had imagined many times over the past weeks. The clean, decisive version. The one where he stepped in and triggered the sequence and didn't think at all. Because thinking was how you talked yourself out of the only option you had. That version had served him well as a planning tool. It was not, he found, what was actually happening. What was actually happening was that he was standing in the center of a machine he had built and rebuilt and trusted with everything. And he was aware, with the complete, unguarded clarity that arrived in moments like this one, of every single thing he stood to lose if the algorithm was wrong. Not abstractly, specifically. The apartment in Palo Alto, with its particular quality of morning light. The sound of Juliet in the kitchen. Friday afternoons at Happy Donut, which was such an absurdly small thing, and which he would trade nothing for. The engagement pictures they still hadn't finished choosing. The wedding they hadn't planned yet, because there had always been time, and now time was the one variable he was betting everything on. Outside, through the walls, the commotion was still building. He had maybe seconds.
I built this. I know every component, every coupling, every line of the algorithm. I wrote it alone, and I wrote it correctly, and I have checked it more times than I have checked anything in my life. It has to work because the alternative is unacceptable.
He thought. Juliet. He breathed in, he breathed out. A sound like the world ending, and then nothing. No sound, no light, no island, no machine. And then, cold air. The particular cold of very early morning. The smell of coffee and something sweet and entirely familiar. Concrete under his feet. A streetlight overhead going through its own quiet business. And in front of him, dark and closed and exactly as he had left it 8 months ago and a lifetime ago. Happy Donut. Lance stood on the empty Palo Alto sidewalk in the pre-dawn dark and felt the specific, overwhelming relief of a man who has just done something he was not completely certain would work and found that it did. He almost laughed. He pressed his hand flat against the cold glass of the donut shop window instead, feeling it solid and real beneath his palm, and stood there for a moment, just breathing California air. Behind him, on a small island somewhere in the South China Sea, a machine was counting down its last 30 seconds. He didn't look back.